Welcome to those of you here in person at the Johnson Shoyama Graduate School campus at the University of Saskatchewan in Saskatoon, Canada. Welcome to those of you joining us by video conference from the Johnson Shoyama campus in Regina, and welcome to everyone joining in by video link on the internet and across the world. This is a special day for us here in Saskatchewan and a special day for cooperatives. My name is Brett Fairbairn, and as the Acting Director of the Centre for the Study of Cooperatives, I am excited to kick off the first ever in a new seminar series entitled The McPherson Talks, a series that honors the late Dr. Ian McPherson. This session is also a 990 graduate colloquium for students at the University of Saskatchewan and the University of Regina, and the students and staff at both campuses will have an opportunity to pose questions in the question period at the end. And I'd like to extend our thanks to the staff of the school for helping make those arrangements possible. To get things started, I'd like to call on Dr. Ken Coates of the Johnson Shoyama Graduate School of Public Policy to introduce the McPherson Talks. Ken.
Great. Thank you, Brett, and thank you, everybody, for coming and our guest speaker for being here. This is going to be a wonderful launch for the idea of the McPherson Talks. Ian McPherson is a good friend of many people in the room and many thousands of people across Canada and internationally. I thought in the moment of the inaugural lecture, I'd take a few seconds just to introduce you to him if you didn't know him already. How many people here knew Ian? Well, everybody in the front row. It's kind of interesting that they've all moved to the front. Most people sit at the back. That's great. Ian McPherson was a historian hired at the University of Victoria and taught there for a number of years. And in that capacity, he made the mistake of hiring me into my first long-term job. I had the great pleasure of working with Ian, who was wonderfully known for a whole bunch of things, including remarkable mentorship skills, a phenomenal commitment to the classroom, and the most remarkable set of practical jokes in the history of humanity. I'm still recovering from a couple of those that he did on me. Ian did everything, and when you say that about people, you actually sort of are always exaggerating. You think, yeah, okay, they did a few things here and there, but Ian did everything, and he did it simultaneously. He was a wonderful teacher, a wonderful scholar. He wrote very widely on Western Canadian history. He was one of his generation's leading Western Canadian historians. He wrote extensively on co-ops, both as an historical force but also as a contemporary force. As a university administrator, he was a department head for many years. He then became a dean. Everybody thought when he became the dean he would stop his external activities, and we subsequently discovered that sort of not being tied down to the classroom meant he could do even more of his external activities as a dean than before. As a cooperator, he was a man who lived every single word that he wrote about and spoke about cooperatives. I remember a wonderful long conversation talking about how he'd signed up his kids for co-op camp. And every summer they would go off to cooperators camp and play cooperators games, and I thought that was a bit goofy, and it turned out so did his kids. But he was the kind of person that even if you thought it was really crazy, you still sort of went along with that, because you just knew he had a heart that was absolutely enormous. Ian showed up all over the place. I was a member of a credit union in Victoria, and turned out, look along, guess who's the president of the credit union? It was Ian. And guess who's the president of the BC Association of Credit Unions? It was Ian. And you'd see Ian on national credit union organizations, national cooperative associations, global organizations devoted to co-ops. In almost every single level of the co-op movement, Ian had left an indelible mark. He did a fabulous job promoting the concept of co-ops and living the concept of co-ops in wonderful ways. Ian, if you wanted to figure out something about Ian, you realize that he actually believed society could be an awful lot better than it was. And he didn't say that from anger, and he wasn't a bitter person in the slightest. He was happy and friendly and joyful, but he actually believed we could do a lot better. And if we worked harder and thought through new models and new systems and new ways of organizing our economic and social relationships, we could produce a better society. And it was at that sense of idealism and joy and a belief in humanity that you sort of understood why he did everything, and why he did everything simultaneously, and why he tried so hard, and why, fortunately, he left such an enormous legacy. Ian passed away far too soon. We weren't ready for it. He'd only retired a short time before, and even when he retired, he kept working just as hard as before. He had an awful lot of work underway, a lot of things he was still working on. And the McPherson Talks were established here at the Co-op Center largely to keep alive his spirit and his values and his joy of life. The McPherson, the title is kind of interesting. We were talking about what to call this, and usually these are the McPherson lectures. Ian didn't lecture, and they're the talks, but not because Ian talked just in a formal setting. If you ever knew Ian, he never stopped talking. He talked constantly, and he talked with pleasure about every topic you could possibly imagine, including golf, at which he was particularly bad. I remember one time going golfing with Ian, and he hit the ball way into the forest, and he disappeared, and you hear this swing, whack, and it would hit a tree. And oh my, he'd say very loudly. And he'd do this like 6 or 7 times before the ball finally came up about 10 feet in front of the tee. And he was just a joyful man. We're delighted to have you here, sir, to speak, and Murray's going to introduce you in just a second. Delighted to have all of you here to hear McPherson talks, because you're going to hear the words and the ideas of Ian coming through in all of our presentations and all of our conversations. Thank you very much for being here. Murray Fulton is going to introduce Carlos today.
Ken, thank you very, very much. Wonderful introduction to the McPherson talks, and really nice encapsulation of Ian. It is my distinct pleasure to introduce our speaker this afternoon, Carlo Borzaga. Carlo is a professor of economic policy at the Department of Economics of the University of Trento in Italy. Carlo is trained in both sociology and economics. And his research interests include cooperative social enterprises, the economic role of nonprofit organizations, and their interactions with welfare policies. From 1997 to 2008, he was chair of the Institute for the Development of Nonprofit Organizations based at Trento. He is currently president of the European Research Institute on Cooperative and Social Enterprise, or EURICSE. And EURICSE is doing some of the very best work these days on cooperatives and the social enterprise anywhere in the world. And that is but one of the reasons that I'm at least absolutely delighted that Carlo is here. Carlo is chair of the IRIS network, an Italian network of over 25 research centers on social enterprise. And he's the co-editor of a newly launched international journal called Entrepreneurial and Organizational Diversity. He has written and co-edited numerous books, articles, given lectures all over the world, and has consulted widely for a number of international organizations, including the OECD, the International Labour Organization, and the European Commission. I think it's tremendously fitting that Carlo is our first speaker in the McPherson Talks series. I'll let Carlo talk a little bit, because I'm sure he's going to say something about his connection to Ian. I know Ian, in his work, had a connection to Trento and some of the work that was going on there. The topic that Carlo is going to be speaking on today, and the values that EURICSE brings to the study of cooperatives were ones that were very, very dear to Ian's heart. As I say, it's a real pleasure to invite you, Carlo, to come and give the lecture.
First of all, thank you for the invitation. Thank to the Center of Cooperative Study for the invitation. And I am really happy, but more than happy, I'm honored to be asked to open this Young McPherson Talks. I met Jan quite late because, in fact, I was mainly studying social cooperatives, social enterprises, not cooperatives per se. When I was asked to establish this European Research Center in Trento by the university, the local province, and the cooperative movement, the Trento cooperative movement, I didn't know, I had no experiences in this type of centers, so I took the chance of a conference organized by CIRIEC in British Columbia, in Victoria, with the idea to meet Jan, because I knew that Jan had this center in Vancouver, no, University of Vancouver. So, Victoria. No, but the center was in Vancouver, no? It was in Victoria? Yeah. But I met him in Vancouver, I'm sure. No. Anyway, the memory of this is going. Okay, but and then he helped me to establish the center. He gave me some ideas about the type of researches we could do, and he came also to Trento in 2008 for 3 weeks to help me to start up the center and to give some lessons to the researchers. So we spent a lot of time together, and we started. You know, Jan was already presented, but he did a lot of things. He was a cooperator. He was one of the people who helped the Cooperative Alliance to renew the seven cooperative principles, and one of the most he insisted a lot.
Excuse Carlo.
Yeah.
Could you please use microphone?
It doesn't.
You'll have to use that one to be able to listen.
Okay.
People in Regina to be able to.
So I can keep also this one.
I think you'll have to be closer to the podium because the microphone's
Yeah. I can take them.
No, it's this one there.
You could hold it if you want.
I must stay here. Okay, I can stay here. Okay. Yeah. If I take with me, okay. Can you hear?
Yes.
Okay. And he was one of the supporter of the seven principle, which was not very well accepted by the cooperative movement, especially German. German cooperative didn't like this idea to serve the community. No, the idea was to serve the members. In Italy, the same. We had this law which imposed to the cooperative to serve mainly the members or only the members. And he was one of the people who pushed the Cooperative Alliance to introduce the seven principle. And we had some discussion about the economic theory, because he was an historian, but he was also very skilled also in the economic theory of cooperative. And we discussed a lot about this idea, which seemed a trivial idea, no? Because cooperatives are based on the cooperative coordination mechanism. No, they are cooperatives. So, but it's not so. It's not so. This idea is not so developed. So we still continue to analyze cooperative, disregarding the fact they are based on a different mechanism, a mechanism which is different from the market and from the authority. So we started to discuss this, and then I abandoned this type of thinking, and then we started again to try, if it's possible, to develop a new or a better economic interpretation of the cooperative enterprises, starting from the idea of the coordination mechanism. And this is what I will present today very shortly, and I hope you can understand, because it needs some knowledge about the economic theory of cooperative. So the presentation will go to, I start with saying something about the state of the art in the economic theory of cooperatives and the limits of the economic theory, the most used economic theory. And then I will introduce the concept of spontaneous cooperation as an autonomous coordination mechanism of economic activity, which is not considered in the economic activity, this type of coordination mechanism, although there is a lot of literature on this. I will say something. And then I will reinterpret, using the idea of the existence of this autonomous coordination mechanism to revise the theory of enterprise as a mix not only of market, the meaning of market here is gain from trade. No, the market is used for gaining, no, in doing exchanges. Not only a mix of market and authority, or hierarchy, but mix of authority, market, and cooperation. Right? And then we will see how this approach can be applied to cooperative, or how it helps to explain cooperatives, and then I will show, if I have time, some application of the framework to specific types of cooperatives. Okay, we still miss a general economic explanation of the existence of cooperative. The classical approach, which is the most common, simply negates the relevance and the sustainability of cooperative. They say that cooperatives don't exist; they are inefficient by definition. This is interesting because if you write a paper with very poor data, which demonstrate that cooperatives are inefficient, they publish immediately. You don't find any difficulties in publishing the paper. If you write a paper with very good data and also very good econometric models, which say the contrary, is that the cooperatives are more efficient than the for-profit company, it's very difficult to publish. They find a lot of problems, or a lot of the referees tend to stress the quality of the data. If you have a time series, they say, yeah, but you don't have across the data. If you have cross data, you don't have time series. So also the institutionalist literature, which explains the existence of cooperative to some extent, tend to position these cooperatives as tend to connect the existence of cooperative with the market failures. The consequence is that since also the institutionalist approach believe that markets at the end, through regulation and competition, will tend to complete themselves, cooperatives are transitional organizations. This is what Hansman conclude in one of these articles. Yes, from point of view of my theory, cooperatives are transitional organizations. They last until the market will be more, until the market failure will disappear. We have a lot of alternative approaches, a lot of work, researches made by alternative economists, but they are mostly empirical, and generally they focus on specific type of cooperatives, and they don't provide any general theory. They don't help to have a general interpretation. The consequences is that the advantages of cooperatives and their ability to be as efficient or more efficient than the other entrepreneurial forms are completely overlooked. Also inside the cooperative movement, not only outside. In the best case, cooperatives are given a transitory role in contemporary economies and are not considered as important as any other type of enterprises. And finally, what matters, because this is a matter of theory, but what the consequence is public policy. Public policies and regulation, public regulation, don't give attention in supporting consistently regulated cooperative forms. For instance, cooperative forms are regulated in completely different ways in different countries. Most of these regulations are inconsistent with the cooperative behavior. Also countries like Italy or France, where we have a good legislation in cooperatives, for instance, they ask cooperatives to use the same governance tool of shareholder company, which is completely inconsistent, because in shareholder company, I suppose that the interests are homogeneous. In the cooperatives, I suppose that many cases, interests are not homogeneous, so you cannot use the same governance systems. But this is the problem. Since we don't have a theory, or you have a theory which acts against the cooperative firm, public policy are not developed, or they go against there are countries where there is only one type of cooperative. They have to do anything with the consumer cooperative, because the law doesn't allow to make other type of cooperative. So the farmers organize the marketing of their product using the consumer cooperative form, because they cannot use any other form. But against this approach, these results of the theory, we evidence that cooperative forms of enterprises prove to be flexible and able to survive and spread also when the market failure doesn't exist, or in sector where market failure are not so important. And on the contrary, many processes of demutualization, which are normally used to demonstrate the inefficiency of cooperative, were not due to the really inefficient, but they were mainly managed by public policy. The case of Mrs. Thatcher demutualization of the building trust, for instance, or by managers. In many cases, managers convinced or they did the wrong policies, in debiting the members and pushing them to demutualize, or they simply convinced them to demutualize to gain more, because changing the type of organization, they could ask for more higher salaries. The mainstream approaches, both neoclassical and institutional approach, have some limits when they are used to interpret cooperatives. And I show you 4 limits. The first one is the traditional, the mainstream approach rely on only 2 coordination mechanisms, market and authority. So these are the 2 coordination mechanisms, which is, if you want, the market and state, with the bipolar model of the economic system. They don't consider other. They don't consider, they don't give importance to other possible coordination mechanism. The second limit is that they take perfect market as a condition that is or already given or will generally be achieved through competition or regulation. They start with the idea that markets are already competitive, or they will become sooner or later. The third limitation is that they overlook the self-regarding and the non-self-regarding and non-monetary preferences, and emphasize the opportunistic behavior also when intrinsic motivation are expected to prevail. Many of these models tend to consider the relationship between the workers or the members and the cooperative as the relation the same people could have in case they transact with a for-profit company. But it's not correct, because I would try to show, when people decide to join in a cooperative to solve a problem, the motivation in implementing in this action are intrinsic and not extrinsic motivation, because they agree to join. They join because they have an interest in the type of activity that the cooperative do, not in gaining a salary against the owner, or to gain as much as possible when they interact with a for-profit company. And there is a fourth important limitation, is that orthodox economic theory, especially institutional theory, considers investor-owned enterprises as dominant, because de facto this theory assumes that imperfections in capital markets are the most difficult to overcome. When they stress the importance of investor-owned organization, is because behind this idea there is the hypothesis that the market which always fails or can fail, in which it is impossible to solve the market failure, is the capital market, because there are strong asymmetries in information between the investor and the entrepreneur, because also the contracts are incomplete, and there is a clear incentive to behave opportunistically toward the investor. This is since this market tend to fail, the solution is to have only investor-owned enterprises. So the superiority of this type of enterprises is linked to this hypothesis, but it's not necessarily true. Also because there are a lot of enterprises which don't need a lot of capital. So the hypothesis, we try to change the hypothesis, and we start with with the idea that market is not necessarily the best coordination mechanism. Sometimes it is, but not always is the best mechanism, due to 2 reasons. One is the persistence of market failures. The labor market is characterized by market failure, and will be characterized by market failure forever. It can be improved a little bit, but not much. We see, as in our developed economists, how many situations there are in which the labor market doesn't work, or doesn't work as the economic theory would like. But there is also another reason. Market is not always the best coordination mechanism. So we normally, when the market doesn't work, we use always this terminology of market failure. But in many cases, it's not market failure, it's market misuse. When we use the market to solve a problem which is not, where the market is not the best solution. The typical case is the insurance services. If you create a mutual, each people is at the same time insurer and insured. The members are insured by all the others and are at the same time insurers of the others, which is the same in public insurance systems. No? Because in that case, what happens that the state use the same mutual, the same rule of mutuals, but it imposes the participation of the mutual to everybody. But the mechanism is the same. If you apply, like United States or like in other countries, no, the market mechanism, you must create an insurer and uninsured. So you make this. We have to separate the company, which is the insurer, and the buyers, which are insured. And we create immediately asymmetric information, which cannot be solved. Can be reduced sometimes. But in the case of health insurance, for instance, the market mechanism will continue to suffer of the so-called adverse selection. It means that the market is not the good way to run this type of activity. So it's not a problem of market failure. Market failure is a consequence of the use of the market when the market cannot work. So we have to clarify what means market failure and market misuse. Market misuse probably is not a good terminology, but is a way to separate, no, or to stress the differences between with the market failure. Second hypothesis is that authority is not always the best alternative to the market. We have a lot of examples where authority doesn't work. Third point, the relative unimportance of imperfection in non-capital markets can be questioned. Market fails also outside the capital market, and especially market fails when the goods provided are not private goods in the proper sense, but are collective goods, for instance, not public goods, collective goods. But most of the goods we are providing now, and the demand for which the demand is growing, are collective goods, are not private goods. So, given this consideration, a third coordination, we have to introduce the idea that there is a third coordination mechanism of the economic activity, which is spontaneous cooperation, which is different from market, is different from authority. It exists and must be considered as an additional instrument for coordinating economic agent. It's not simply a secondary way of managing things, but we have to put it at the same level of the other two coordination mechanisms. And it is a way, is a coordination mechanism alternative to the market and to the authority, can substitute one of the two. Reasoning in this way, we can introduce new ways to pursue entrepreneurial objectives. So, how do we define the cooperation? Cooperation as a coordinator, it's not cooperative, it's cooperation, it's much larger than cooperative. Emerges when a group of economic actors voluntarily decides to join effort and resources to solve a common problem, when the solution of this problem increases the members' welfare. Any type of problem. To create a kindergarten, to build a house, to produce or to manage a place or a forestry or a lake or a water, what we want. obviously, when the collective action produce a result which higher than the results they could reach acting alone. No? When people together can, we say the production function is super additive. No, the results are better when people join together. So the transaction managed through the cooperation are based on voluntary. They are voluntary. They are not compulsory. There is no one which make people to do this type of agreement. And at the same time, differing from market exchange, they are not based on the equivalence the principle. So people interact and transact also if they are not sure to gain exactly the same amount of value they pay no. So they more or less the cooperative mechanism is based on reciprocity principle. So people participate in this common project. They know what they give. They don't know what they will receive. They know they will receive something, but there is no equivalence between. And when the equivalence is not equivalence, market doesn't work or doesn't work in a proper way. And this is useful to develop transaction when, under the veil of ignorance, when people start a business, they don't know what will happen. When they create a new product, a new business, they don't know if the business will survive, and they don't know exactly the end of the story. And especially, they don't know if at the end they will have this equivalence between contribution and output. In that case, the reciprocity is important because they participate, because they know to gain something, but they know also that they could gain less than they provide. And in some cases, they know that they will give more than they will receive back. For instance, taking responsibility, for instance, no, in managing the enterprise or the business. And it's also useful to develop new transactions when the relation between economic agents is positioned over time in the future. We don't know the result. We don't know what will happen. We start something which probably will solve the problem, but we are not sure. So to have this cooperative exchange can help to start up the business, the initiatives. Also, if there is no knowledge about, or the knowledge is not perfect in the future. If we take this idea of coordination or cooperative as a coordination mechanism, we find cooperation in many activities. In voluntary organization, for instance, they are based not on altruism; they are based largely on reciprocity, and they are a way of cooperating. People join together and they cooperate to solve a problem. Not always they create a business, but they can. Voluntary, I would ask also as association providing services for the member. This is the basic coordination mechanism. Is not market. Is not altruism. No, is cooperation. They join together because working together they can solve a problem or they can provide a service. Management of common pool resources, of natural resources, the so-called commons. Commons are, in some cases, large pool of common resources, totally managed on the cooperative principle, on cooperation. And look, they are not small, only small activities. Most of the forestries in my province were managed for hundreds of years by rules which were established by the farmers, completely illiterate people in 14th century. And they function for centuries perfectly. The water supply in San Francisco, you probably know, is a common. Is managed by a common, is based on the cooperative mechanism among the people of San Francisco. Obviously, we find cooperative mechanism in cooperative enterprises. But this is only one case. But we have now a lot of cooperation in the development of open source software and publicly available knowledge resources. Wikipedia. What are the principles on which Wikipedia, Linux are based? Cooperation. People cooperate, they are not paid. They contribute to develop the system. Why? Because they know that they could receive back some ideas from the others. Reciprocity principle. There is no authority, there is no market, there is no money going on. It's simply all this type of new collaborative economy. There is a huge debate about collaborative economy, are based on this principle. Behind these ideas, there are a lot of theoretical supports. First of all, the Ostrom, Elinor Ostrom work. Very few quoted in cooperative studies. This is strange, because what Elinor Ostrom demonstrates, there are three coordination mechanisms: market, authority, and cooperation. And she shows that cooperation in many cases is much better in managing common pool resources than market and state. Demonstrating that when the state decided to take care of the commons were destroyed. Okay, but there is a lot of this is probably for an economist. This is more critical, no? Because we have a huge development in behavioral and evolutionary economics, and especially in the application of this evolutionary economics in game theory and experimental economics. Now most of the paper are in this subject, no? Experimental economics, evolutionary economics, and so on, which focus mainly on individual and collective behavior, including not fully self-interest motivation, and not self-interest preferences. And they demonstrate that in many cases, people behave cooperatively. If people, there are a lot of these experiments where people are allowed to talk before starting the game, the so-called chip talk. Chip talk. They are not asked to talk about the game. They talk what they want, and when they are allowed to talk, the solution they find when they start the game is more or less the optimal solution from a general point of view. So they don't behave opportunistically. They tend to share the gain with the other members to reach an agreement which satisfies all the players. This is obviously and there is no connection between the theory of cooperatives and this development of the economic theory. They go isolated. This is what. So what we have to do, or we try to do, and we will try to do, is to take some further steps forward in the theory of the firm that largely disregard this theoretical development. The idea is to include this theoretical development in the theory of the firm. So if we conjunct this, conjunct these theoretical approaches, we can maintain that cooperative coordination can serve as or better than market and authority to reach compatibility between control rights, member motivation, and mutualistic objectives. Typical problem of the economic theory. Organizational routine and institutional based on cooperatives can be able to internalize and sustain over time better than other coordination mechanisms the non-self-interest preferences, intrinsic and pro-social motivation, because they use this type of preferences. So they use and since they use, they can sustain over time this motivation, and then they can accomplish fair interaction, procedure, and outcomes. We have done some research on worker behavior in non-profit organization, and we found that people change the motivation when they start with not motivators for only because they were looking for a job. So they found that job and they started to work for the non-profit organization. They change in preferences, and they tend to take the preferences of the organization. But this is, we need obviously to work much more on this, but these are some. From our perspective, enterprises, which are tools directed to pursue entrepreneurial objectives, can be conceived to different degrees as mixes of different coordination mechanisms, market, hierarchy, but also cooperation. Like market and hierarchy, cooperation exists in all organizations. So all organizations are a mix of these three coordination mechanisms, not only of two. Which means that cooperation exists in all the organizational types. Obviously, the for-profits are mainly based on market exchanges, gain from trade. Public-owned organizations are mainly based on authority. Cooperatives are mainly based on cooperation. But we find cooperation also in for-profit organizations. When management study, people study the management, they insist in asking workers to share the aim of the business, of the organization. They are asking for cooperation. Because the only reason I share the aim of something which is not mine, which is owned by others, is because I am ready to cooperate, to help, and people who study the labor market, they know quite well that the Akerlof research, where Akerlof shows that also in shops, the people working for the shop tend to work more or work to this is a gift exchange, no? To do something for the employer, although also if they are not paid for that. No, and it translates this in a gift exchange. No, there is a kind of they give a gift to the employer. I don't go to in cooperative cooperation, as we defined it, is the main coordination mechanism. The implementation of cooperation in cooperatives is achieved giving the ownership and the power to take decision to the members. So the members are in charge to take the decision, so they give the power to manage. And using participative and democratic governance, and in this possibility, this power flanks monetary incentives and authority in inter-organizational relation. When the enterprise is asked to decide strategic objectives, they are decided by members and discussed among members. It's a choice between members. Majority, no? To the majority rulers. They decide together the production plans, how to produce the good, how to run the business. And also they decide the distribution patterns, how they distribute the value created by the enterprise among the member or also among non-members. It's an autonomous decision. They don't go through the market. They can decide to distribute the value also using different types of rules. Like, for instance, price discrimination. They can decide to use different prices for different clients. It happens often in social enterprises, for instance. When social enterprises ask people, richer people, to pay more, and they use the money to provide the services to poor people for free or at lower price. This has nothing to do with market, because market the market rules are completely different. Cooperatives are indeed different from other organizational domains in their internal working mechanism, at least in three fundamental aspects: how welfare is generated, the type of welfare they generate and they provide, how coordination among the actor is achieved. Is different from the market. They're not based only on monetary incentives. How the producer surplus is distributed, as already said. These differences can explain why cooperatives can overcome market failure. But this is an old story. But it explains also if cooperatives are also able to generate higher surpluses and welfare, which is a better organization compared with for-profit and public one. And it explains also how and when cooperatives can manage economic transactions better than market authority. Allow us to understand this. And I think we have no time, no? I go to give an idea. This is obviously the cooperatives are not relied not only on intrinsic motivation. They have to provide to provide also economic results to the members. They have to give a salary or provide. But this is not the only reason that induce people to participate. No, cooperatives by themselves, since they are based on this cooperation mechanism, can rely much more than investor-owned company on non-self-interest motivation. And opportunism, which is normally considered a strategic behavior, is not correct to consider a strategic behavior in cooperatives, because people join cooperatives not for self-interest preferences or monetary preference, but for a mix of preferences, which means that the objective function of the cooperative is quite much more complex than and it's difficult to manage a cooperative, because it's necessary to balance the different preferences of the members. But I obviously in cooperatives there is also authority and market exchanges. Cooperatives operate in the market, so they can use also market exchanges. But what I want to show you here is some consequences very quickly on 4 types of cooperatives. First of all, worker cooperatives. No, normally economic theory says that worker cooperatives are not efficient because the workers tend to maximize income. They maximize the wage. This is not true. In many cases, cooperatives, make the difference between cooperatives and other forms, tend to balance the level of income and the stability of the job. And workers know, the members know that if they want to guarantee the stability of the job, they have to receive less wages. So this is something that only cooperative can do. If we go toward a labor market characterized by precariousness, because we are changing now, no, from for this model and so on, probably cooperatives become much more interesting. At the same time, cooperatives can increase the member welfare by improving the flexibility of contractual relations, for instance in working hours, or by increasing member welfare by creating a better working environment. If people are looking not only for wages but also for working environment, they could prefer a cooperative. And cooperative is a superior organization because can provide this type of environment much better, because are the members who decide what type of environment they are looking for. I was looking at a research comparing people working in kindergartens in public and private in the same province, all people with a very high level of skill, and the result is that they are satisfied for the job in the same way. Both the people working for cooperatives and for public. But when the question about the working environment, the difference is between 6.5 on 10 in public organization, 8.7 in cooperatives. But because the reason is that workers believe that they can control their job. They can decide. When there is a problem, they decide by themselves how to solve the problem, and then don't rely on an authority. They don't need to ask the municipality how to solve the problem. And this level of autonomy increases the quality of the environment. There are a lot of researches on this which gives the same results. Again, for producer cooperatives, agricultural cooperatives, no, they are normally interpreted as a way to contrast the market power. Marketing cooperatives. No, most of the paper on these cooperatives are show that this, which is consistent with the institutional orthodox theory. But if you look much better, these cooperatives have a lot probably more interesting outputs or advantages, which have nothing to do with the market failure. For instance, they tend to stabilize the short and medium run fluctuation of revenue and demand. This ability to avoid the flexibility which characterizes the agricultural market, especially in case of vegetable and fruits. Why? But they use different strategies. One of them is to keep some money when in good years. They take some money and they save some money for the bad years, so they can stabilize the. But probably most important, they allow farmers and mainly farmers to combine the advantages of the small size of their business, which is very important in many high quality and high valued production, agricultural production, because quality needs flexibility. Flexibility can be offered by family businesses. When family, they use, and they have a clear advantage when they are, because they are able to combine the small size of the business and the economical scale. Small business join a cooperative, and the cooperative can become bigger and bigger and bigger, larger and larger, much more than a for-profit company. This is why, if you look around the world, most of the production of vegetables, fruits, and so on are organized in cooperatives. Instead, you find very few cooperatives in the soya field, or in maize, or in wheat, because these are not specialized. They don't need a flexible production. No, they use a machine, the big machine that run by the computer. And now there is a new emerging, interesting role of agricultural cooperatives, which has nothing to do with market failure, which is the ability to diffuse among the members new knowledge that can be used to improve competition, the quality of the product. And this, we are analyzing this flow of information from the farmer to the cooperative and from the cooperative to the farmers. And this is all free. The cooperative doesn't pay for the information they receive from the farmers, and obviously farmers don't pay for the information they receive from the cooperative. They are creating attaching knowledge, which is probably the most important support for innovation. Finally, they reduce coordination costs along the value chain. They can completely eliminate the value chain, or they can manage all the value chain, bringing to the farmer all the value produced by the cooperative, without giving money to the intermediaries. And finally, the credit cooperatives, again, credit cooperatives are more efficient. The relations in banking, which is run by financial cooperatives, end in lower rate of interest. No? Because they don't care about profits. This is important. The aim is to serve the members, to give them credits. And this is the reason why they provide credits also also to opaque producers when they limit the credit rationing, but they tend to cut the interest they ask from the members, much lower than. And also in this there are several researches which show, for instance, that in the region where cooperatives, financial cooperatives are very strong, so when in the region where cooperatives make the market, and the other company and the other banks must follow, the rate of interest is systematically lower than in other provinces. And finally, the last, this is much more clear when we the social cooperatives or community cooperatives, no? Often characterized by multi-stakeholder governance. In that case, is the type of goods and services they produce are they are characterized by positive externalities. From an economic point of view, if you produce positive externalities, it means that some part of the value you produce goes for free, no? is appropriated for free. But if you are a for-profit company, this is the profit. The profit is the margin. If the margins, if the margins, if you are not able to capture the margin, and the margin goes in favor of others, there is no reason to establish a for-profit company. This is the reason why, if we look at the experience around the world, most of these cooperatives, they were not created because there was a market failure. They simply arrived first in providing some services because they were flexible enough and also ready to accept to produce positive externalities, and they started the business. They can also control negative externalities, and the same on the contrary. Conclusion. The approach seems to be promising. It's very simple. Probably the idea is quite stupid, no? To say that cooperatives rely on a specific coordination mechanism, but it's not really is not applied in the economic debate about cooperatives. It is consistent with the critics of the prevalent socioeconomic model based only on two actors, market and state. We have a lot of criticism against this idea that we need something more. Something more what? We need some more cooperation, which sometimes means also more cooperatives. It's also consistent and helps to explain the results of many empirical researches. We have a lot of researches which are consistent with this and also experimental game. It could help to develop new and more consistent ways also to manage cooperatives. How many cooperatives in the past have imitated a shareholder company because they based on the idea that shareholders are more efficient by definition? This is not true. They are more efficient given the hypothesis, the basic hypothesis of the economic theory. But these hypotheses are not so convincing now. There is all debate about the cost of governance. No? Cooperatives have a costly governance. Yes, but if they produce a higher surplus, the problem is not if a business costs less or more. It depends on the value they produce. I can cost more, but I can produce more value. And at the end of the day, I am more efficient because I cost more, but I have to compare my cost with the value I produce. Okay, thank you for the attention.
Don't run away. You got to take some questions.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to go to Regina to see if anybody has any questions there. And I think we'll only take a couple because do you want to go to the mic? You're a little ways away, but try and we'll see if we can hear you. Was that a wave for a question? No. So I'll go to Saskatoon. That's easy. Does anybody have a question for Carlo? Or are you saving them for the reception? Dion's trying to not put up her hand. I'm warning you. This will be the last question. Here you go, Dion.
Just on your last point, very interesting presentation, Carlo, thank you. On your last point about efficiency and co-ops using investor strategies that are common in investor-owned firms to manage because of the assumption that they're more efficient. How do we actually, do you have any ideas about the ways that we measure the surplus in co-ops? Because I think part of it's very difficult to rationalize a different management approach in any type of enterprise that relies predominantly on a coordination mechanism. If you can't sort of actually measure the surplus because people don't necessarily believe it. And so some of the management strategies being used in cooperatives are adopting investor-owned firm strategies because it's
easy to measure.
Yeah, and because it's easy to measure. And so what would be your thoughts on that?
I think, but it's a good question, so I'm not sure to be able to answer. But in my view, it depends on the type of cooperative you are doing. You are dealing, because, for instance, in some cases you can use cost-benefit analysis. In case of community cooperatives, you can. You can produce new indicators. In some others, we have to change the way in which the indicators are built. For instance, there are several researches, comparing investor-owned agricultural businesses and agricultural cooperatives, using the ROI and ROE, return on investment and return on equity. But people forget that in that case, investor-owned firm maximize profit. So it means that they tend to cut costs. If they buy the grape outside, they tend to pay the grape as less as possible. Cooperatives maximize the costs, because cooperatives maximize the money they give to the farmers. But in the balance sheet of the cooperative, this money goes to the cost too. And they compare, and they don't say anything. Obviously that the ROI and ROI of the cooperative is lower. But you can change. You can put the value of the raw material in the value added. And you see that the situation changes completely. So it depends. So sometimes it's enough to change the position of the different value. No? So in that case, in the last case, you move the money spent to pay the raw material, you move up to the value added, because from the cooperative point of view, this is value added, because it goes in the hand of the farmers, which are the owner of the cooperative. In other cases, you must use a specific indicator to show your social output or your externalities, or to show how you can reduce the externality, can reduce the negative externalities. So if you have a business which tend to be environment friendly, you can probably find some indicator which show how your business is less polluting than another similar business run by another company. So I think you need a specific indicator for each type of cooperative. It depends. What matters is to have in mind that it is useful to provide to produce this data, this information, and to analyze your situation, trying to find out what are the best indicator. For instance, we apply this idea of the cost-benefit analysis to analyze how much a public administration, public authority, save when social cooperatives employ disadvantaged people. And we went to and we calculated how the demand for services, for health services, social services, declines when these people are employed with a salary. And we found out that we did the research in 5 or 6 areas, and we found that the public authority save between 4,000 and 7,000 euro per year per worker.
Thank you. Dion always asks the best questions, so thank you, Dion. One short one.
Yeah, very interesting. There's a sort of growing interest in the institutional and organizational literature on hybrids, sort of organizational forms that sit between markets and hierarchy. So how do you see your approach on cooperatives fitting within that literature on hybrids? I'm just curious, of hybrids, does it help explain hybrids, or can you just comment on where you'd position that?
It's not clear what hybrids means. Again, this is one of the terminology which is used by different disciplines in different ways. In many cases, any real organization is a hybrid, because often hybrids are defined as something different from a theoretical model. So for-profit business doesn't exist as they are described in the literature. There are no businesses which care only to make profits. some banks probably, but no, they are for profit. Most of the businesses in Europe are family business. They don't care about profit. They don't care. They don't maximize profit. This type of businesses, for instance, family business, is a hybrid. If hybrid is something which is different from a theoretical model, it's a hybrid. Now I know there is this idea to call social enterprises or enterprises with a social aim or pursuing social aim as hybrid. I don't like to be defined as an hybrid. Are social enterprises, are cooperatives. Why use? My feeling is that this idea of hybrid is a way to make people to believe that for-profit organizations are changing and are taking social responsibility. Also, they are considered also to charge themselves of social responsibility. The history doesn't go in favor of this hypothesis. What we need, from my point of view, are different organizations. We need I am against the idea of the hybrid because it's an idea which don't accept the Ostrom proposal to consider simply a plurality of organizations. There are different organizations. There is a pluralism, and no one is better than the other. It depends on the type of activity you are running or the type of aim you are pursuing. I know this is not very common because especially management studies, they like hybrids.
Well,
the social business, but you use the idea of social business. Is a social enterprise? Is a non-profit enterprise or an enterprise with a low profit enterprise? It is like a cooperative, no, okay.
We can continue that discussion at the reception, but before we go there, I'm going to invite Lou Hammond-Kettleson up to say some final words. And please join me in thanking Carlo as well. Thank you, Carlo.
Thank you very much, Carlo. And I just I want to say just a few closing remarks, and it's a great pleasure to be able to do this. And I think it's interesting we've come kind of full circle here because when Ian was first setting up his center in BC, he spent a lot of time here chatting with Brett primarily and getting ideas about how to pull that center together and what strategic options to pursue and who to fundraise with and so on. So it's nice to have you back here after having established your own very successful center as well, and to support Ian's long contention that if I just talk to the right economist, maybe I would be able to find the answer that I'm seeking, because he over a beer or two had many not so positive things to say about economists and the way that they thought about cooperatives. So I'm glad to see this theory being set out so clearly, and I know that Ian would as well. I have been for many years a colleague of Ian's in a lot of different types of research activities, but it was through my work with the International Cooperative Alliance that I really came to know Ian probably the best, and I also came to know his wife Elizabeth, and more recently their sons Andrew and Jonathan. And so unfortunately we didn't have anyone from the family able to join us today, but they did send a few comments that they wanted me, or not myself, but us to share with you. So this from Elizabeth. Many thanks from the McPherson family to all those responsible for organizing the McPherson Talks, a most appropriate and meaningful way to honor Ian. He would be pleased. Good wishes to Carlo Borzaga, guest speaker at the inaugural seminar, and to all those attending this special event at the Center for the Study of Cooperatives. We are very grateful for your respect and care in keeping Ian's strong commitment and devotion to the cooperative movement active by organizing and attending the inaugural offering of the McPherson Talks. From Elizabeth. Just a few more things I also wanted to mention. One of the inspirations behind the McPherson Talks was a financial contribution. And if anyone is interested in adding to the fund and furthering the work that Ian was doing through the speaker series, please have a chat with Audra, and she's always happy to take your contribution. I also want to say some thank yous in support of today's event. Thank you to the University of Saskatchewan Office of the President, and as well the Office of the Provost and Vice President Academic for supporting the function. And finally, I want to thank again all of you for attending. Those of you here today, those of you with us virtually. Unfortunately, those of you joining us by the internet are not going to be able to enjoy our reception that I'm going to invite those of you in the room to share in the next few minutes, and to ask you one more time to join me in thanking Carlo for a very interesting and informative talk.